Hello, my dear ones. How are you? This last week you could feel the fall coming down here into Florida, and this morning it was cool, windy. It's got all of us like turned on. It's like all the heat through the summer, and it's like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. It feels good. Well, it gets real humid here in Florida, just real humid. Of course, it's a good way to sweat, brother. I'll tell you. I love it because you can go out and really detox good out here in the sun and stuff. And not just from the sun, just from the humidity. And but fall's coming. How are you guys doing? I hope this finds each and every one of you well. For those of you that are suffering, stay strict. Realize this is your world and you can do this. Any one of you can do this. You know what gets in our way? Our mind. Our emotions. That's what gets in our way. And we have to learn how to control those. Well, how do you control the mind with the mind? You can't. You can't. That's why psychiatry and psychology sometimes fails, because you can't use the mind. You must learn how to become greater than the mind, something that's outside of the mind that controls the mind. And that's where the confusion lies, even in academics, is that awareness is thought. No, it isn't. Thought is not awareness at all. These are states of awareness. Awareness is something that's total, that is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. It's undefinable. Some try to define it through energy. Quantum physics has talked about energy has awareness. Energy has awareness. What? For some, that's very hard to believe. For some, it's hard to believe that plants have awareness. Very difficult. All these levels, human levels are, there's a lot of levels to the human state of consciousness. So when you realize how you become back again to yourself, how you become awake, conscious, it isn't through the mind. It is through our... So this is why you hear the power of the now and all the things talked about being here now. Even going back to Timothy Leary and Ram Dass and all those about be here now. And it is an active state of awareness because thought, we're so used to using thought as our guiding light, our desires mixed with that this is how we create creation. But creation is your movie. It's your drama. And if you want to wake up from your drama, this is why it's difficult for the medical community or highly academic individuals to sometimes overcome conditioned thinking, for them to understand the simplicity of truth. And so they knock simplicity. They belittle others. Because the higher part of the mind is the id. As Carl Jung's wife said, the id, the individualized self. And that is the ego. Now, the id is the individualized self, but accentuate that into the ego. And the ego becomes, I'm greater than, I know more than. And in reality, the joke is on that individual because we all come out of the same, and there's nothing any greater than that which is. And if you're part of the greatest thing that is, there's no getting greater. So you can't be greater than what you already are. It's difficult when you define yourself as a human, or you define yourself as a soul even, and you define yourself at all. And it's hard for many of you to undefine yourself. It's hard to live in the world of non-definition. Some of you are going through that in detoxification where you're being ripped, your emotions are being ripped apart, you're getting to a point where there's nothing. You don't, and sometimes you call it depersonalization and things like that. If you take that truly into the spiritual realms, you will find your answers are that consciousness is undefined as you are undefined. Definition means you've reduced yourself. You've taken the omnipresence of you and reduced it to a definition. That's creation. Creation is nothing but definitions. And that's how the mind works, in definitions. It's trained. So when you ask someone to think outside of the box, you can't think outside of the box. That's an old cliche. You can be awake and see outside of the box, but you can't think outside of the box. Because all thoughts are conditioned thoughts. So you look at the medical community, they're conditioned to think that things are diseases. And that diseases have some mysterious origin, which is difficult to understand. Some pathology, or get into the parasitic worlds of bacterium and blame them. But that's focused thought. You see a symptom, there's bacteria involved or whatever involved, and you blame that. And then suddenly that's a cause of all of it. Like we were talking about pneumonia, was blamed on pneumococcus. Well, then they realized in 50% or more of the cases of pneumonia, there's no pneumococcus present. But for years, since some people had pneumococcus present, they had to, well, what's causing this? That's because they were conditioned to look at effects and not be awake to causative factors. And so it's like chemists in chemistry. When you lose the pillars of simplicity for the chains of thought, then you become lost even in chemistry. When you think the body's in a state of alkalosis predominantly, when it's in a state of acidosis, you've lost perception of metabolitic waste, you've lost the perception of how chemistry and what becomes of chemistry in the process of metabolism, respiration, combustion, all these things. So simplicity is always your pillars of truth. Built into complexity is okay. It's kind of like getting into nano levels, and then into energetic thoughts become then frequencies of electromagnetic energy, then becomes chemical particles, which you could call nanoparticles if you want, or subnano, but then into the subatomic, which is electrons, protons, neutrons, that sort of thing, and then how that forms the atom, and then the atom then forms the elements, and then you start complexing life into form. But it starts out with thought at higher levels, not at the physical level. That's one of the more coarsely formed levels. And you're all just having bodies on these coarsely formed levels, but it isn't you. So you have to remember that some people are so lost in conditioned thinking. And that's where you have to be careful with academics. I love science and academics, don't get me wrong, by any stretch. But it can carry you into fields of stupidity, fields of unawareness, and untruth. So you have to always remember that truth is consciousness, is you. How you proceed in creation, in duality, then is your activity, what you're doing on a Sunday afternoon. So this is why you have to be careful, why medical doctors are so trapped, because they study and cram so many different things that they don't even need or never use, and learning how to pronunciate words this long, which no one ever uses, and only creates complication and confusion. Well, that is words of art. That is meant to be. That's how you control others, is bringing out information, what you think, or creating illusionary concepts that no one else knows or can understand. Suddenly you're better, you're more aware than others, and that's totally untrue. You know, creation is just all created concepts of thought. And you can create anything you want in creation. But there are pillars of truth, and that's what I try to teach you on this YouTube site, is the pillars of truth. And chemistry only has two sides to it, two pillars holding all of it up. And you can always go to that simplicity If you have RA, rheumatoid arthritis, what side of chemistry is your body on? If you have tumors, what side of chemistry is your body on? So to understand that, you have to understand the effect of each side of chemistry. What effect does acids have in life? What effects does alkalis or bases have? Generally speaking. And you can build upon this simplicity to understand why there is tumors, why there is the inflammatory response, and then you also can apply that to the foods that you eat. For a medical doctor to sit there and talk about us in the negative sense is a joke to me, and they don't even understand the chemistry of foods. Most of them don't understand the chemistry of mothers. When you promote high-protein diets, you do not understand nutrition. You do not understand health. You do not understand the nature of mother's milk, the species that the Homo sapien belongs to, or any of the vertebrates as far as that's concerned, because no vertebrate except the carnivore deals with high-protein diets. And those that do, if you examine and watch them, they go for the pre-digested protein, gut tissue, and the food that's in it. That's why I used to say rabbit doo-doo is the best food for dogs, because high-protein diets destroy dogs, and that's all they're going after now. And in pharmaceuticals, all these things lie on the nitrogen acidic side of life. And when you treat acid conditions of the body with more acids, you are creating harm to the human body. You are lowering the vitality of the human body. You are augmenting the DNA and chromosomes. You're creating genetic weaknesses that man is hard to pull out of. The pharmaceutical world and the treatment concepts in the medical world are predominantly responsible for the decay of the human health. And then we go to them asking them about health issues. So we must wake up to the reality that the world of diseases is a fabricated world of unconsciousness. That if you want to know the truth, you have to go to causative factors, the basic factors of chemistry and how chemistry creates form and the effect of each side of chemistry on form. Now you're into reality, you're into the real worlds or the reality of creation. You can take creation and warp it in any manner you want, that's obvious. But there's pillars that creation rests on. And when it gets out of balance, it either swings to the yin or yang side, which means it swings to the acid or base side. Things that swing to the acid side are into the destructive principles. When you recommend high proteins, you're on the negative side of life. You're recommending the evil side of life, the side of life that is involved in decay. Like it or not. The electrolyte, the side of life that's in the healing side, is always the female side, and that is the base side of chemistry. This world is dominant base chemistry. Changing, that's why everybody's bitching about global climate changes and all that. Let's be real. We're talking about a world that's becoming more acidic, more heat producing. But in reality, some places are becoming colder. Everything is magnetically changing. So, but look at the waste and byproducts we're throwing in the air. The factories, all of this, what is that? It is acid rain, acid air. These are acids. Man has to be taught the side of acids. Burning down the jungles. In Brazil and these places, we're creating more acid air. Combustion. The toxicity of even the burning down of things. So we have to apply that same thing in the body when acids build up from the burning of chemistry. What do you see? The destruction of form. Be it a tree, a plant, or be it cells in the human body. Doesn't matter. Same problem. So for man to pull himself up out of this, like you guys are doing, you're learning to spend more time as the observer instead of the thinker. Because you could go to school and study I have got a nice library. And then Dr. Jensen gave me his, and I turned around and gave it to a chiropractor friend of his because I don't have any room. I'm out of room for his library and my library. I have no room. Plus, I don't read anymore much. If you're not a pace setter, there's an old saying, and I apply that to academics. If you're not lead dog, the view is always the same. In other words, if you're not out there bringing out the truth from consciousness is how creation comes out of. So consciousness has all the answers. That's why those that even play in the drug world, that's why Timothy Leary was playing with window pane or LSD, because it quiets the mind and brings forth awareness if you don't trip all over the place. And there finds all the answers that you're looking for, because it's in consciousness. All the answers are not in thoughts, it's in consciousness. Thoughts are only the academics or ideas or pieces thereof. So when you become more conscious, more awake, becoming more the observer, you start seeing and the answers start coming to you because you're seeing it more. You're not lost in chains of thought, conditioned levels of thinking, which is, that hasn't been discovered yet because no one works. Why do you think Thomas Edison took cat naps? Or who's that famous the psychic guy, Edgar Casey? Why do you think people go into meditation or contemplation? And really is what prayer should be all about. Instead of petitioning the Lord with prayer, so to speak, you're using it as a quiet time to listen and to be in the now. You're not using it as a process of thinking. You're trying to break that chain of thought through relaxing and breaking away from thoughts. That's what true contemplation is pulling yourself into the now. You can travel all you want, but you always must remember who is the traveler. You can travel from one God heaven to another God heaven. Who cares? There's plenty of heavens, there's plenty of worlds, and there's plenty of places to go. It's like traveling just on this planet. There's plenty of different places to go. There's plenty of different places to go in the physical universe. Look at the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of galaxies, which have hundreds, if not thousands of planets per galaxy. Plenty of places to go. But who's the goer? And that's you. And when you touch into the you, like the circle of iron. I was doing a podcast interview over the weekend, and I mentioned the circle of iron, and the guy interviewing me goes, I love the circle of iron. I didn't know anybody knew the circle of iron. What was the seeker of God, the seeker of truth, which they use Zetan as the Lord God, whoever, but it doesn't matter what name you give it. What did he finally find after fighting all the elements of emotions, the elements of thought? What did he find? Himself. Himself. After it's all said and done, it's always about you. But when you become more and more of the unconditioned, more and more of the unlimited, more and more of the undefined, who are you really? All right, this is Elliot. Good evening. Wait a minute, it's morning here. It's whatever you want to make it, isn't it? Absolutely. I've recently started working with a student of yours, Brooke Cook, here in Ohio for my own detoxification. However, I was hoping you could offer some insight into health concern I have for my daughters. Thank you, Brooke. I love you guys. You know, this is why I have the classes, because they're not difficult. And you know, when you tell a board of medical doctors or child services that you can teach someone, a housewife, in a week how to cure anything, it blows all, it's like zinning them. There's no way. It's so complicated, medical doctors can't even figure it out. It's complicated to those lost in thought, because they can't see truth when you're lost in thoughts or chains of conditioned thinking. And education creates chains of thinking, conditioned thinking. You're studying what someone else thinks, or what someone else thinks, or what some lab thought, or what some paid study has worked its way into that. And suddenly you believe in some of these things that are not even true. But you're conditioned to think that way. You're conditioned to think that the world is full of diseases, like vaping creates lung disease. Really? How does vaping create a disease? It's not a disease, it's damage to tissue. You have simple cause and effect, and when you believe outside of that, you lost yourself. You've lost reality. Everything is cause and effect. Everything is duality in creation. Everything is yin and yang, male and female, up and down, all these things. And duality can manifest itself in untold forms, untold levels. It can go on forever. There is no beginning and there is no end. So, all of you never think that you're not good enough to heal anybody from anything, because that's untrue. Any one of you could take someone burned up with chemotherapy and radiation, if they're not too late, and tumors, and save them. Any one of you could take an MS client in a chair with brain lesions and pull them up out of that chair and save them. Any one of you can. And to think that you have to go to school for an untold amount of years and get your mind totally conditioned in chains of thought that doesn't even have truth to it, and that can cure them, none of those guys can cure any of these cases. Matter of fact, when you talk about cure, it's like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And they put there'll be a pharmaceutical cure to these things because their diseases is the biggest joke ever played on the human consciousness. It's designed for pocketbooks. Cause and effect. If you understand what makes you healthy, you can understand what breaks you down. If you understand what breaks human cells down, you can understand why you can get healthy, because there's two sides, literally, to everything. And if you get lost away from that, you can blow back and take people, or, shame people, and you can do these type of tactics. But that's how you have to get. It's just the negative forces trying to bring you down, trying to control the world. We're into negative times, if you hadn't noticed. And that power in the health field is called the medical community. Not to be negative, I love emergency medicine, surgeries. Yes, there's some real positive, beautiful things about that. There's also some real negative things about that. We want to be healers, those that see truth, because we're not lost in chains of thought. We're not lost in stupidity or concepts that have no beginning or no end. Concepts that are autoimmune. What does that mean? That means your immune system went crazy. All these people's immune system went crazy and nobody knows why. See, that's the world of unconsciousness, the world of the mind, the world of thought, which can't understand itself because it's lost within itself. You can only understand when you get above thought and above mind. Conscious, become conscious. When you do that, you'll appreciate the time it took to learn how to be in the now, learn how to be a watchful or to be an observer. Even if you have to walk around, be here now, be here now. I used to say that to myself all the time, breaking the thought processes. Because we're so used to it, and this is the negative side of education, is that it plays with the mind, it conditions your mind. So we have Montessori and stuff like that to hopefully break some of that, But even in Montessori, you have similar stuff. What you want to see in true education is not only educating and developing the mind, but also developing your ability to step outside of the mind, to use the mind, but not be controlled by your thoughts. Thoughts control your awareness. And suddenly you put your awareness in all these streams of thought, like going to the movies. And so that becomes your movie. So wakening up to God, wakening up to reality is simply breaking chains of thinking, of thought. And the same could be true of emotions. So never feel that you're not good enough, no matter who you are, where you are, or how old you are, that you can't help others. Look at on America's Got Talent, the just turned 11-year-old that can sing opera better than most opera singers. She's amazing. You can tell she's an angel from heaven. Don't tell her she can't do anything. My twin girls, Riley and Skylar, now 2 years old, twins, eh? Who were born at 25 weeks, 3 days have been exceptionally, have been born at 25 weeks. 3 days have been exceptionally sick this past week, and I'm looking for advice moving forward about chronic lung disease, please. Oh. Well, you know, we talked about vaping in the last video. It isn't just what you breathe. It's also very much what you eat. And the lungs, the bronchial trunk, and the sinuses get a real hiccup on what you eat. And we've talked a lot about this through the years of how dairy products, in particular pasteurized dairy products, has a immunoresponsive or a mucosic responsive effect. And we're dealing in proteins. Most proteins are foreign to the human body, unless they're found in the stage of amino acids in fruits, berries, melons, and maybe vegetables. And when you start complexing amino acids, you start developing foreign protein structures to the human body. And when you add heat to this, or when you add acids to this, same thing, you create a glomulation. Go look in a chemistry book that acids create a cationic environment, which is an environment of glomulation. What's a glomulation? Everything gets hard and sticks together. In other words, you start feeling stiff and sore. Pain is another side effect of proteins or acidosis. Well, these create a mucosic response. What is the mucosa? All the lining of the gut and the organs and the mouth. This is part of which system? The blood system? Nope. Well, there's only one other responsive system. What is that? The lymphatic. That is your immune system. Very little immunity in your blood. Most of your immunity, look at an A&P book, most of your immunity is in what system? The lymphatic system. But we don't understand the lymphatic system. We do. I do. I've been almost 50 years at teaching this. And just because a lot of the information I'm teaching you is not in the books yet, that I brought from other places, doesn't mean it ain't true. So, understanding that the mucosa is part of the lymph system, and the lymph system is a what? Watery system? Oily system? Definitely oily, right? That's the gallbladder, the oils. And the gallbladder is a major part of the lymphatic system. Hydrolyzes lipids. You don't dump a bunch of lipids into the blood. It's like you don't dump a bunch of proteins into the blood. Because what happens when you dump a bunch of acids into the blood? Well, if your blood couldn't steal calcium or some sort of, and not bicarbonate, medical doctors live on the bicarbonate chain. Really? Then if you really looked at this from a true viewpoint, you'll find that the calcium buffering system, like a lot of great universities have brought out, is really what's going on. You wouldn't have the loss of calcium in your body like that from acid ash foods if your bicarbonate system always neutralized this acid ash. You wouldn't have that. Everything entering the blood would be alkaline, and that is not true. But then you would say, medical doctor would say something like that, but then they would believe on this side that the body dumps metabolitic waste into the blood. Okay, which are acids. So there's so much of this oxymoron stupidity because they're living in the mind. And the mind can't see itself. It doesn't have an overview. Consciousness, awareness is the overview because it sees totality of things. Like a jigsaw puzzle. A perfect example is a jigsaw puzzle. The pieces are chains of thought. And if you don't have the picture, try putting a jigsaw puzzle that has 1,000 pieces together without a picture. It'd be forever. Having a picture is always how you can put these thoughts, and that's what I'm trying to teach you. Become the picture, become awareness, where you see the whole picture, then you can play with the little pieces if you want. It's more fun that way, and you don't feel inferior, you don't feel lost. And then it has to be frustrating for some good medical doctors when they can't figure out what causes all this stuff. Because there are some great medical doctors that have learned this truth and that have applied this and have started curing people. That's satisfactory to the self. When you can help another, but when your job is to destroy tissue and destroy others, thinking that it's helping others and there's nothing else, and that anyone else that's helping others, that is narcissism at its greatest and very karmic for the individual. That's the other problem here, is these souls are creating all this karmic backlash that they'll be spinning for quite a while here in these universes, paying back all this. There's another side to this that we don't talk much about, and that's the karma involved in your activity. Remember, cause and effect is karma. That's that simple. It isn't something mysterious. Jesus simply said, you reap what you sow. Same thing. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Physics, same thing. And we need to be taught that at an early age. You put it out, you're going to get it back. So be careful what you put out. That's why I like the healing side of life. Help others and give love to others, and that's what you get back. If you don't like what life's giving you back, change what you give it. That simple. So, when you're looking at lung tissue, you've got several things to think about. You've got certain foods are mucosic responsive, in other words, mucus forming. So the lungs become full of mucus. The sinuses, the bronchi, the voice box, the throat, the esophagus, all these walls become full of mucus. And this mucus can harden through years of being acidic. Now add that on top of what? Interstitial lymphatic response. In other words, the lung tissue is nothing but a bunch of cells, spaces around them, and what's in the spaces? Blood and lymph. So when your lymphatic system isn't being, your sewer system, in other words, is not cleaning itself through the kidneys and skin, it starts backing up. And it not only backs up into the ovaries and then eventually ovarian cysts, or the prostate and prostatitis, and then what's next after these? The total damage of the cells, which they call cancer. And then they try to treat the cell. Instead of backing up, realizing what's causing all of this backlash to the cell. Whether it's lung tissue or cells, whether it's prostate cells, ovarian cells, uterine cells, liver cells, pancreatic cells, does not matter. Cells of the ponds, does not matter where. Bunch of cells, spaces, and two fluids. What's the spaces around every cell called? Interstitial. The new big organ found by... So you've got two things to think about. You've got the congestive part of this from the very foods that you've been eating. Two, because look at these babies, they go right into formulas, which is extremely mucus forming. High protein formulas, really, and mother's milk has very little protein in it. I mean, they don't even make formulas that match the chemistry of mother's milk. They matches what the American Dietetics or some other unconscious group of people think. Ridiculous. Ensure, Pedisure, ridiculous chemistry. And then there's nothing natural there. I can isolate the chemistry out of food and then change the potency of that and then give it back to you and create a vitamin mineral supplement. But I've lost the pH, the synergistic effect of that chemistry and the proper pH balances and the proper ratios of chemistry, calcium to magnesium to phosphorus to zinc to iron. I lose all of that because I can outthink the Creator. That's the problem. I think. That's why the whole foods, whole means whole. It doesn't mean I've broke it down, isolated the chemistry, and gave you back a natural supplement. Natural supplements are not whole foods, unless that supplement is fruits, berries, melons, or whatever, made from whole foods. But why not let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food? I love that one. The Hippocratean, the true Hippocratean oath, not that I will do no harm, that's bullcrap. Because that's all medical community is about, the treatment of symptoms. And when you go that way, you do nothing but harm. Because you're generally in the world of suppression. These chemical steroids, all these things suppress body functions, suppress lymphatic function. Yes, temporarily it gives you a nice feeling. All you beautiful people that have dealt with skin problems can testify to this. Look at all the skin pharmaceuticals, all the steroids. What happens? Comes back with a vengeance because it's suppressive in nature. What you suppress, and this is an old saying I've said for years, what you suppress today is your nightmare from hell tomorrow, is your tumor tomorrow. That's why nature uses detoxification. It would be wise that in the medical community they take some classes on natural health if they want to tout themselves as being smart in nutrition. In other words, you guys are blowing out your you-know-what and sticking your chest out thinking that telling the world you know when you don't know. And what you don't know can harm others greatly. Like putting someone with already damaged cells that you call cancer on a high-protein diet, you might as well just sentence them to hell. You might as well just make the coffin for them and put them in it. And that's true for you naturopaths that think you know what you're doing and following the medical protocols. There's no high protein in naturopathy, never was. That's all medical thinking. There's no meat eating in naturopathy, never was. Matter of fact, in natural healing, you always got out of dead animal foods and their milks. If you eat it, okay, you eat it, but it has nothing to do with natural health or healing. Eating organic beef and organic fruit, no. That was medical thinking. That's what medical doctors did when they wanted to kind of combine naturopathy with their side. Well, we'll just eat organic beef. Same chemistry. You might not have the antibiotics and crap like that in it, but it's the same high protein levels. It's the same putrefied blood and putrefaction cells that are putrefying and stagnant blood that is putrefying, and that's healthy. It's one thing to eat something like that. Okay, I get it. But it's one thing to claim that it's healthy. That's way out there. What's healthy is eating the food designed for your species. That's number one. Just because there's all levels of food out there doesn't mean that each species can eat it all. Like omnivores can cross-eat a little bit. But they can't cross-eat too much into the protein section or they go down. Feed your dogs high proteins, and what happens? They get rectal bleeding. They get all the things linked to the GI tract cancers, which is what the World Health Organization has been saying for years, even though I have limited faith in those guys. Got to understand the simplicity of health and healing and what chemistry does to the body. The fact there's only two sides to chemistry, whether you're talking about, and its effect, whether you're talking about lung tissue, pancreatic tissue, GI tract tissue, it doesn't matter. When you add this up, every cell in your lung produces acid waste. If you're smoking things or breathing too much acid air, you're bringing in more acids into that mix. And if you're eating dairy products or mucosic responsive foods where you're getting congestion or you're talking like this, then you're starting to add that on top of all of this, and pretty soon the corrosive effect of this will break down lung tissue, no question about it. So what's the other factor in lung problems? What department turns on the lights? The electrical department. So never forget the nervous system connection to everything. So which nervous system would we be talking about in the lungs? The central or the autonomic? Breathing, push-pull. The autonomic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Where does that get its neurotransmitters? Adrenal glands. They sit on top of kidneys. They control what? The lymphatic system. So you're always back to that same broken record of the lymphatic system. And when the nervous system goes down, you're hard to take an exhale. It's hard to breathe. Panic attacks, anxieties, all of this comes out of the adrenals and the autonomic nervous system. So then you start getting into serious problems. Now, also, remember that the more acidic that the lung tissue can get, it's going to pull what out of its connective tissue, the tissue that holds the lungs in shape? Calcium. So now you're going to get calcified lungs, weak connective tissue, and a lot of people's lungs collapse on them. And you can go on and on and on with this, obstructing the blood flow in the lungs, getting ischemic changes to lungs, deteriorating and getting degradation of the cell of the lungs. You can go on and on and on with this. How do you fix it? First of all, you change your diet. Number one, we're a Homo sapien. We're frugivores. You can't prove otherwise. You can't prove we're vegetable eaters. There is nothing about a human that is herbivorish. We don't grind. We don't have the length of the gut. We don't have the multiple stomachs. We have hands. We don't have hooves or claws or things like that. We don't have any of that. We're not herbivorish. Herbivorish is cows, horses, elephants, giraffes, the gentle beasts. We're primatish. We're frugivores. Now, we can eat vegetables. We can eat meat. We can eat sardines. We can eat anything. We can eat wood. We can eat worms. You can eat anything, but is it healthy for you? Will it help you regain your health? Will it take your health down? And how come it is that you're sitting there in a wheelchair, you got brain lesions, you can't talk anymore, your limbs are getting mottled, and how come it is that we can put you all on fruit, and pretty soon you start waking up, your hands start to strengthen, and you start talking, and then you start walking? How can we do that just on fruit if fruit isn't healthy for you? Answer that, medical doctors. Where's the high protein in that? And what happens to someone that you're working on like that? Put them on a protein diet and see what happens to them. If you got the guts, and if they're willing to go backwards. So the problem they have is that we have all of you guys doing this, and I've had through almost 50 years a lot of clients. Hard to blow back on. Proof is in the pudding. So if I'm dealing in 2-year-olds, first of all, they should be on fruit diets, because what do you want to mature? Not just the muscles. You can't argue with muscles on primates that are frugivores. But what else do we want to mature? That fruits are the king of maturing in our young babies. Brain and nervous system. Brain and nervous system. I would love to have Cody. And I bet you $100, if not $1,000, that Cody, the one that won America's Got Talent, I'll bet you $100 he started going blind and everything else after a vaccine. After a vaccination. That's what they're doing to our babies. That's what they're doing to our world. For what? To be immune to what? Look at the MMR vaccine killing babies all over the world now. Countries are starting to wake up a little bit. And yet they keep promoting it. Fox News the other day, as much as I like those guys, were promoting free flu shots. Really? If you want to get well, expect to go through a cold and flu-like symptom. Why? What you put in, it's got to come out. And what you put in is mucus forming. Expect to have a cold and flu. Expect to get rid of. You know, some medical doctors overseas are a lot smarter than ours. Colds and flus run their courses. Why? Because they're a form of detoxification. And most people that go on a detoxification go through cold and flu-like symptoms. Why? What comes out? Mucus. Now, where does this mucus come from? The mucosa? Why would the mucosa secrete mucus? Because you irritated it with chemistry that it doesn't want. It's the immune response part. Mucus is a major part of the immune response. Or you can add that to the inflammatory response. Mucus. It is lipid. It is protective to which side of chemistry? Acids. Alkalized bases, electrolytes, do not create a mucosic response. The body wants that. It's hydrating. And when you get dehydrated, you dehydrate the mucosa. You get dry eyes, dry mouth. You start drying up, shriveling up like a prune, losing your calcium, burning up all your electrolytes. So you get wrinkles, prolapsing, everything like that. Same thing in the lung tissue. So I'm 2 years old, 100% fruits, berries, and melons. That's where I'm going. The highest diet a human can live on. Now, I'm going to use the 3-lung tincture. I'm going to use maybe even the lung formula on top of that. But where am I going to? I'm going to the lymph system. I need to get in interstitially. I need to get to those cells. Now, I could take the 3-lung tea and I could create an inhaling steam that my little girls could breathe in and breathe over and help. The steam. But I'm going to go inside. I'm going to start working on the lymphatic system. I need to get around those cells and clean that what's burning those cells or breaking those cells down. That's how you create genetically weakened cells. And if they have genetics in those tissues, I need to strengthen that. I need to strengthen the DNA. I need to educate that DNA to another higher level of existence. And when we talk a lot about this in class, the consciousness of foods, the awareness of foods. When you live too much flat here in the mind, you don't see that life has awareness and that there's activity on all levels, not just chemical levels. There's all kinds of things going on that man is so ignorant of, it's not even funny. Fun stuff. All right, so a little background. 109-day NICU stay on oscillator vent, the most time spent here on heavy support. It goes on and on and on. All kinds of oxygen there. Skylar struggled most with weaning, and both girls extubated, had to be re-intubated 4 times, went home on 4 liters, holy crap, for a few weeks. That's a lot. When you see someone walking around with their little oxygen and all that, that's 2 liters as a rule. 4 liters is quite a bit. Last year in January, both girls got RSV. A pulmonologist decided they were too healthy to need synergist and ended up sick. Skylar in PICU for 10 days on Vapothem, 70% oxygen, 12 LPM, given, this is going on, created a home plan for when they got sick, albuterol. See, but albuterol, the problem with albuterol, again, these are steroid derivatives, and they're suppressive in nature. So this is the problem with suppressing any lung tissue. I would also use antispasmodic instead of albuterol. In other words, a dilator so they can breathe. You know, and again, when you use these chemical dilators, the blowback is horrible. You always have to have them. And if you watch someone with like that, they walk more and more and more with shortness of breath. Sends you into the COPD chain, which is probably what these poor girls are dealing with. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but it's not a disease. Flow vent 2 times a day is needed. Holy crap. These little girls are in trouble. The problem is with these girls now, their lungs are going to want to expectorate. And you can't treat expectoration and come out of it. You must allow, either get a suction machine or allow for them to cough and get rid of a lot of the sputum. And you can use an herbal antispasmodic to help the restrictive flow to loosen them up, and I'd use the alcohol one quicker. And you can put it right in the mouth if they needed it to help dilate and to get breathing. And if you needed to use, you want the least antispasmodic that is steroidal driven. Because the problem with this is then you're making the adrenal glands weaker, which is then weakening the autonomic or nerve response to the lungs, which is breathing. And it just becomes a major catch-22 till you can't get out of it. When you go the allopathic way, you just end up not coming out of it because it's constantly treating symptoms and not fixing the problem. And when you treat the symptoms, you usually use a steroidal or some type of pharmaceutical that is restrictive or suppressive in nature. Herbal antispasmodics allow for breathing, but allow you to expectorate at the same time. And that's exactly what one needs to do. This fall they each had 2 viruses, and then boom, here we are in January back in the hospital. Well, here's the thing. When it gets cold, that's alkaline. Alkaline is a rehydrator. We can call it a detoxifier, but in chemistry it hydrates. And hydration then pulls out and loosens up agglomulation, which is acidic. We can call it detoxification, but it's a natural process of ionization, and what begins to happen in an agglomerated medium of acidosis. Then everything that is to become agglomerated loosens up and starts to be expectorated. This is a natural process of chemistry. We could call it detoxification, but it's a natural process. And that's what these girls are going to go through. And you have to expect this. You know, so it's a touch and go at this age of 2 years old and what the medicals had them on doing. So when they just go on fruit, that's an alkalizer hydrating. So they're going to see the same thing, a cold and flu-like symptom, maybe a fever. Great, we want fevers. Oh, no, we don't. Why? See, that's medical thinking. And when you try to stop fevers and you stop the body's immune system and its hydration from happening, you're sending that patient to a deeper world of hell. You're blocking them deeper into Hellville. Well, we like to unlock the door to Hellville and bring them through to Wellville. Sometimes it isn't just an easy walk. It can be tedious. It's too bad we don't have medical doctors with a higher level of awareness to understand this that can help us bring all these children into Wellville instead of taking them down to Hellville and into Deadville. Like St. Jude's. Bacterial pneumonia. Really? And here we go again. So here we go, treating these cases where the body's trying to expectorate, blaming bacteria like pneumococcus, using antibiotics, killing the bacteria in the lymph nodes, killing the people that are trying to help these children get rid of the mucus in the body. That's all this is. All the microbe world is dealing with the terrain. You create a dirty terrain, a mucus and congestive and acidic terrain. Don't be pissed off if bacteria come into your body to help you with that. You can blame them, but that's what kills a lot of people. A lot of people die from pneumonia from the treatment of it. One broadcaster was talking about that one day on one of these ABC, NBC, or one of them, how their friend was killed not from pneumonia, from the treatment of it. Thank you. Nobody dies from pneumonia properly done. So be careful. Ear infections. Well, what's that tell you? They're congested. They're highly congested. And all this acidic mucus and stuff is decaying their lungs or the ability to breathe. Oh, yeah. How do you fix that? You have to decongest, not suppress. That's the problem with medical thinking. I hate to keep going there, but that's what we're up against here. The healers are up against medical thinking. People are fighting medical thinking that that's where they need to go because that's where the remedy is, because they're dealing with diseases that only medical doctors know about. And that all is a huge lie, a huge fabrication that has locked humans into Hellville. And if you want out, and you want your freedom, you want your joy and your happiness, and you want your two little girls, you've got to work them through this. And as I say, it ain't an easy ride sometimes to work yourself, to work them through this. Because you have to understand, fevers are good, expectoration is good. But the more you lock these poor girls into this, they're going to be so bad that it's going to be hard. And then tumors, and then all this starts forming, and then now you're into some serious crap. Raleigh was on oxygen and needed antibiotics. Needed antibiotics? Really? That's what they said, and that's what they conditioned you to think. Monitoring is now home, doing breathing treatments listed above, and finishing antibiotics, but only sitting 90 to 91 in sleep on pulse. Okay, so they only have their O2 saturation basically is at 90 or 91. You want 98, 99 to breathe good, to feel good. You start getting down to 95, you're in trouble. These poor girls are only down to 90. But how do you breathe through a highly agglomerated mucus and lymphatic stagnation? How do you breathe through that? How do you oxygenate through that? You don't. And that's exactly what's going on. Until you clean that out, that's where they're going, lower and lower and lower and lower until death takes them. Oh, we did everything we could. Yeah. To bring them into Hellville. Despite pulmonologists wanting both girls to be above 92. Well, yeah, no kidding. Above 92? They need to be up at 96, 97, 98. And then you don't want 96 even. Especially when sick. Skylar has been admitted for 7 days now and was once again in PICU, pediatrics ICU. 70% oxygen. Oh my God. Pulmonologist wants them to have oxygen at home for when we need it. That might be a good idea. But remember, when you start bringing oxygen into the lungs, and not 100%, of course they tell you all of that, what begins to happen? If you want to start detoxifying your lungs or your sinuses, what is one way of doing that? Learn how to breathe properly. Learn how to breathe abdominally. Breathe in and let your stomach go out, but or your diaphragm instead of your thoracic. You don't breathe with your shoulders. That's your second breath. Your first is pulling that oxygen into the lower lobes, which is diaphragmic breathing. So, down here and then up here. And you do that enough, you're going to start going, because that'll break up mucus. That created a disease. Now we got to treat the mucus. That's how you kill people. That's how you take these little girls down into Hellville. The girls eat a relatively healthy diet, play constantly. Well, if the girls eat a relatively healthy diet, it should be fruits, berries, and melons only. Because outside of that, there is nothing healthy for these little girls. Vegetables, okay, but it's not going to get them where they need to go. Anything outside of that, there is nothing healthy. There's nothing healthy about grains, whole grains, beans, dead animals, milks, raw milks. That's only take them down to Hellville. All of those things. These are the foods not for man, not foods of man. If you have to eat them for desire, okay, but don't claim they're the foods of man because they're not. Take elderberry syrup and probiotic daily and omega fish oil. You're trying to sprinkle a few little things of goodies onto a whole bunch of crap. You're blowing into the wind, and by probiotics. The more you kill the bacteria, you're playing a dangerous game. And it's the only game they know to play because that's what they were educated. They went to school to be taught and brain conditioned about diseases and how to treat them. They don't know. They have no clue to what's causing this. And it's all in front of their eyes. It's all in front of your eyes. Because I've educated you to a higher level of understanding of how life works in the chemical worlds, in the worlds of physics, and the worlds of consciousness. Here are some of my questions. How do you know how much of a child's lung is damaged from being a micropremier? Well, first of all, use the iris. The only way you can tell, as far as I'm concerned, is take a look at the iris, take a picture of their eyes, and take a look at the lungs and see if you can tell how much is involved. Of course, x-rays, but then they've probably been x-rayed out the butt already. I wouldn't worry about the other part. I'd go after regeneration of the human body. And let the lungs catch up. They're only 2 years old. And whatever's malformed will then form. It's like when someone's not tall enough or whatever, we go into the pituitary, go into the thymus gland, we start rebuilding and strengthening cells. But we clean and strengthen. We allow for expectoration of the mucus and the acids. We rebuild, we use herbs to strengthen tissue or cells. There is no other way on this planet or any other planet in rebuilding tissue is cleaning and getting rid of the agglomeration, the acids which break down tissue, fix the sewer system, and rebuild the tissue with botanicals. There's no pharmaceutical that's regenerative to the human body. Excuse me? Only God created that which is regenerative, and that's what is destructive. Learn the two sides. And so in the rebuilding side, you're on the base side of chemistry predominantly. Foods naturally fall perfectly into pH in the acid and base side with a predominant base side. Fruits are not all alkaline. They have their acid principles just like vegetables do. Pulmonologists say you can't repair damaged lung tissue. They're full of crap. They can't repair anything, so nothing's repairable. They say nature will repair livers. As you see a lot of people donating part of their livers. The liver tissue rebuilds itself. They don't rebuild it. Medical doctors don't rebuild anything unless they're getting into broken bones and things like this where they're putting in plates and screws and things like that, like a carpenter or a repair person would. Absolutely. But the actual rebuilding of tissue is done through chemistry and physics. It's done through consciousness. It's done through the foods and the botanicals. Those things that were made for that. They were made by man. Man can't make anything that does all that stuff. That is extreme narcissism. And that'll only give those people a lot of karma. See, and the thing is that you've got to remove the congested nature. You've got to be able to increase lymphatic drainage of these lungs. Being genetically weak is another big problem, and the lymphatic stagnation is assured. So hydration and the alkaline side of chemistry, the fruit diet, the astringent diet is essential to these young girls, or I don't know how you do it. You're asking the wrong guy. And it's not true. Lung tissue, all tissue. Nerve tissue isn't rebuilding it. Oh, really? Really? Pancreatic tissue, all tissue in the body rebuilds itself. But it doesn't under a pharmaceutical acidic sky, an agglomerated sky where the lymphatic system is stagnant, the kidneys not filter. Yeah, you're not going to rebuild tissue in an acidic medium. That medium dictates corrosiveness. That's a natural chemical medium. We all know that. Anybody that has chemistry knows that, but you forget that. And then the base is regenerative, hydrating. And these are facts, and no one out there can dispute these facts. I don't care who they are. I don't care what degree they have on their chest, how many yaharas and pats on the back they have. This is life in the physical world at its fundamental levels. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand anything in terms of how to get anybody healthy or what decays. They're all just diseases, autoimmune things. We don't know. It's mysterious. Someday we'll find the answers. Really? No. It does make the stocks go up through these companies for a while. What can we do to prevent the girls from being sick? You're not trying to prevent them from being sick, please, because they are going to get sick when you start hydrating them. They're going to go through colds and flus, mumps, and or maybe even that. But they're going to go through fevers, mucus discharge of the sinuses. They're going to cough up mucus out of the lungs. Isn't that what you want them to get rid of? How do you get rid of the congestive nature? Wave a magic wand. Or maybe a pharmaceutical will mysteriously dissolve these acids and disappear into Never Never Land. None of that happens, guys. That's synthetic thinking. Nothing happens there. What's in that's damaging must come out. Tissue doesn't just damage themselves just because they're sitting there being a cell. I'm a cell and I just think I'll get damaged. Chemistry either heals or damages. You just have to know which side does which. Well, get a chemistry book for dummies, if they even talk about it. So you got to understand that you're not trying to treat this as a problem, as a disease. You're trying to understand that genetically those cells need to be enhanced and strengthened. You need to clean out all the mucus and crap that's in their lungs, and you need to get the lymphatic system moving around the cells where it'll continue to decrease the effectiveness of the cell and the ability to oxygenate the blood. If you don't get all this mucus and all these acids out of interstitial spaces, you can't oxygenate the blood. And you'll see the lower oxygenation of the blood going on just like they're seeing, but lower. Oh, you can give them oxygen, forcing that thing through. They are not in daycare and family watch them during the week. If you really want to save your little girls, you got to roll up your sleeves, educate everybody, let them listen to this video, and really prepare yourself for some Humpty Dumpties. Because and get someone here to help you or this student of ours to help you go through this. But even for a student, this is a tough case. It's a tough case. Because you, the parent, has to learn what needs to take place and what they're going to go through, and you don't rush and take them to antibiotics and jump in fear with bacteria and stuff like that. If you do that, you will never get your girls well. You'll be fighting this for years until they translate. If you truly want to bring these girls back to a state of wellness, you have to allow them to go through the doorway of elimination. A doorway of detoxification. Call it a cold and flu-like symptom if you want. Call it pneumonia if you want. But that's a doorway, and the lungs will always try to get rid of what it doesn't want. It's like throwing up or sneezing. If your body doesn't want it, it's going to come up and out. If you look at that as a bad thing and try to treat it, hellville you're going. Okay? And you have to understand the lymphatic system. And 2-year-old girls in today's world, adrenals, kidneys, for sure. Use the eyes to see. Send me the picture of their eyes. We'll talk about it on YouTube because this is a tough case. And I hope you guys are interested in this case because these are some of the tougher cases you're going to have to pull these people out of these hellbills. And these are only 2-year-old people. But this will go for a 90-year-old as it would a 2-year-old. And it's a job sometimes. But the person going through it has to understand, here's the problem. They're minors. The medical doctors think they have jurisdiction. Child services think they have jurisdiction over you, over your kids. They know better than the parents. The parents are labeled as mean parents, or parents that don't love their children because they want their children well. That's narcissism. That's a society out of control. That's a judicial system out of control. That's socialism. When you want control by those in power. And we gave them the power. We need to take it back. Limit their power over ourselves. Because they've taken and ran with it. And medical doctors think, oh man, you're not treating your kid right because you don't follow what we believe in. Well, the medical community is what's taking people to hellville. And they brainwashed all the judges, child services to think this. Yeah, there's some bad parents, no question. But the bulk of parents are great parents wanting wellness, and they don't want vaccines. They don't want toxicity into their kids. They want their kids, they want to learn how to rebuild their children from genetic weaknesses and serious problems like this. The problem is they're so tuned to everybody's a bad parent that they don't get it. They don't get vaccines and what they do to the kids. The SIDS and all these type of cases. It's a mess out here on this planet. It is a mess. And most of it's promoted by the allopathic community. Sorry, tell me somewhere else. Show me somewhere else that it has been. We don't promote that as naturopaths. Well, some of the new ones might. Us old guys, we know exactly what causes the deterioration of the human body. We're here to help fix life, not to help decay it. Any advice when asking the pulmonologist? I think that's where your problem is going to lie, is your pulmonologist. How about your pulmonologist watch this video? Because that pulmonologist needs to learn the simple fact about the lymphatic system and about certain foods and the bump those foods have mucosically. These aren't diseases. Yeah, you might not have formation of the lungs properly, but how do you get that? Let's look at the pituitary gland. Let's look at the thymus gland. We can promote the health of those tissues, then reflecting the hormones and steroids for the promotion of health of the cells. But we can also promote the health of the cell by having proper blood flow to the cell, and what, most importantly, the removal of metabolic acids from that cell, and the getting rid of the congestive nature of this. Because when you start conglomerating the lungs, good luck breathing through that. And when you have medical doctors saying there, we don't know what about vaping causes the damage to the lungs, really? Then don't call yourself chemists. Because we know that in smoking. Smoking is acidic, and acids damage tissue. Acids are corrosive. Now you start burning the flavors, you're creating cytotoxins like who knows what, super damaging to tissues. So you add all this together, and this is why you see the acceleration of this right now. Certain flavorings probably have a real gnarly effect when you burn them. And if you don't know that as a medical doctor, then you shouldn't be asked your opinion when these news agencies wants to know what causes lung damage. Not lung diseases, lung damage. This is damage to the lungs. Not a disease, it's lung damage. It's like what's going on with your girls. They're not rebuilding their lung tissue, they're continually damaging it because you're not doing anything to move the lymphatic system, stagnation in the lung tissue, which always is there genetically speaking. And on top of that, I'm sure the things they've been given, and then the antibiotic treatment. Now you have lymph nodes without bacteria and stuff. How do you break down metabolic acids? See, they don't know this. They don't get that. They blame everything on bacterium. Really? Yeah, let's blame everything on why the bacteria would be there present in the first place. You don't go after the bacteria. You're not trying to get rid of the symptom. As a matter of fact, you're going to promote the symptom of expectoration. If not, this pulmonologist is creating a glomulation like no other. And the next thing is tumors. Now you're in serious trouble. Because what you don't expectorate, what you don't eliminate, you accumulate. And when it's the acid side of chemistry, from all the metabolitic action in the lungs, along with the mucosic response to the different foods, you're in trouble, no matter what age you're in. And these little kids are given milk, and if your daughters were breastfed, probably the mother's milk was acidic. If the mother's diet was acidic, her milk has become acidic. Milk is not to be acidic in any animal. Now, we can argue the cat family, but there's a lot. When you look at that, even the protein in cat milk is low. The lipids are higher than the carbons. Why? Because of the high acid nature of the diets. I'm telling you, there's a reason why we have lipids to proteins to carbs. And we don't, this whole idea of sugars and how bad they are, you have to relearn that thinking. That is ridiculous. Carbon is essential to all life, and it is the number one burner of fuel that we have. You know, what happened to Atkins when he started starving everybody for carbon? They died. You don't do that. They say the girls will have asthma, especially because they each have one patch of eczema. Oh, God. Oh, Lord. Well, let me tell you, asthma has nothing to do with eczema. Now, in what way is that not true? Lymphatic. What would be the connecting link between asthma and eczema? We know the lymphatic system, but there's one other system, because asthma is a little different than just congestive. It's the first part of the COPD chain. Pulmonologists should answer that right off. Neurological. And where do we going for that? The autonomic. And where do we going for that? Adrenal glands. You're going right to the adrenal glands. If you're not careful, these children will have extremely low blood pressure. And then the blood sugars can go. I mean, this is everything goes. This is the adrenal glands. This is metabolism of sugars, minerals, neurotransmitter production. And then if their GI tract is a mess, this is the head. This is the brain of the autonomic, the solar plexus stomach area. And that breaks down. So when they're heading for deeper into this, they're neurologically now going down. That, And then if you give these girls surgery on propofol, that's what takes a lot of people out. You're already neurologically compromised, then they give you a greater neurotoxin. I mean, it's a cat chasing its tail like nobody's business. You have to re-understand what you're thinking, pull yourself out of that medical thinking. If you don't, you're going to be pulling yourself back and forth when your daughters go through detox. And detoxification is just hydration. It's a chemical response the size of a quarter. Eczema, size of a quarter. That is the least thing you have to worry about. But it does show you that what's involved. What's your skin? Your third kidney. Your largest eliminative organ. Of what? Gases and metabolitic wastes. Acids. And when you don't eliminate acids subcutaneously, you hold them in. Guess what happens to the skin? Yep. Call it eczema, call it psoriasis. They're all different levels of the same thing. Dandruff, all of this stuff. What happens if you don't clean dandruff off your hair, off your scalp? It burns your scalp. It's kind of like when a baby pees in his diaper and you don't change the diaper. What do you see? A rash. Why? Acids. If the baby's eliminating properly, he'll have acid urine, or she, and that'll burn the skin. If you don't remove acids away from cells, it'll what? Burn the cells. What's the body's response to acids up against a cell? HDL in the cell wall, and then LDL on the outside. Then you have what I call the inflammatory response. Mucus, cholesterol, calcium. Then you have your histamines and your interleukins, of course, edema. These are all parts of the inflammatory response to what? Acids, proteins. And if you want to be well, you've got to learn that, especially when you're dealing in this level of a problem. And you can't freak out when these girls start expectorating. It's a natural effect of chemistry. Medical doctors don't know that, so they treat that, thinking that, what, this mucus is bad or something? Knowing that the lungs get full of it. Well, shouldn't it come out then? Or it's just going to disappear? I mean, stupidity on top of stupidity on top of stupidity. That's what happens when you get into using the mind too much and not into your awareness. Well, we'll help you, that's for sure. But Casey, you really have to learn, because this is a tough case. And I'm going to use this as a case of the day, because this is a case that you have to work them out of this. And understand that you're going to go through some things. Fevers. What's a fever for? What's the largest eliminative organ of the human body? The skin. And what happens if your kidneys are not filtering? You better hope you get some fevers, and you better hope you're sweating. What do you think we sweat for? What's the benefit of sweating? Elimination. Of what? See what I mean? You have to keep asking these questions and then answering appropriately. And when you have a medical community that doesn't believe in fevers, it's like, really? Yeah, you can seizure if your fever gets way too high. But children love 104, 105, like it or not. They love 104, 105. Cool them down to 103, okay. And let them sweat. Keep them what? Hydrated. Well, hydrated, how interesting. And that's what you're doing to your girls here, is hydration. But you're going to see an effect of hydration, because you're pulling in the opposite side of chemistry. It's pulling in the healing side of chemistry. Call it detoxification, if you will. So I love you guys. I hate to ramble on about these things sometimes, but it's important that you get it. I've done so many videos here, and we've talked a lot about these cases. And now I'm just a little more pushing you, just a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. Because you have to break through this conditioned mind, this conditioned medical thinking of nowhere land. They don't have a clue. And you're having physicians work on your children that have no clue. They're going to keep treating symptoms with pharmaceuticals. And that world is a world of suppression, which just leaves you deeper and deeper and deeper into Hellville. When they wake up, they'll become part of the help to get you well. Till now, they're part of what takes you deeper into Hellville. I hate to say that. Now, there's good medical doctors out there, no question, that is working on the good side. But when you have them sit there and cut us down and do all this, come on, let's talk about it then. I love you guys. But there's serious cases out there, and this is only 2-year-olds. Isn't it sad? But it's our children. And these are the future of the planet. We get them well, and we build their genetic weaknesses and get their level of awareness up there. It might be a decent planet to come to, if you like creation. I'm just saying. I love you guys, and thanks for listening to this old guy. But we're here to expand the awareness of this level, and you guys play a vital role in that. So never think yourselves beneath or under anybody, or because somebody went to medical school that they know more than you and you don't have, no, don't ever think that. Don't ever put yourself inferior to anyone. Especially realize that sometimes the more educated you are, the less aware you are of truth. Because your mind has been conditioned to other people's thinking, not to truth. Truth is in who you are and in consciousness, which all truth is in there. All things creation come out of consciousness. So if you become conscious, you are now privy to truth. Love you guys. See you on the next video. This is the weekend, and I got a lot of work to go do. Thank you.